Lately, I've been thinking a lot about patterns and routines. Now, those of you who know me know it's something I do a lot of. I'm a pretty routine-oriented fellow. You're not supposed to be laughing already.
Can't help it. Amen.
Well, let's put it on you. What's your most valuable daily routine?
I'm not the man of routine that you are, Roger North, but I would say for me, my most valuable has developed over time.
Okay.
And it would be most nights taking some time near the end of the day, often at the very end of the day, to reflect back on the day.
Okay.
And normally I'll plan a little bit of what the next day holds. And I typically do that at the end of each day.
So look back, look forward. Might be 30 seconds, 60 seconds, something like that. Write a few things down, a few goals for the next day. Task list. You do a task list?
I do a task list.
Okay,
I prioritize
good.
for the next day and decide what do I want to hit first most days.
Well, I got to thinking about that it's the patterns and routines of our lives that pretty much determine our success and how intentional we are about those. And then I got to thinking about when we go in to help a client, when we're invited to come in and help a client, basically that's what we look for, isn't it? What do we look for when we go in and interview a client for the first time?
That's exactly right. We're looking for themes, patterns in terms of how the organization functions, perhaps how they lead, how they function.
And most of what we find are healthy patterns in organizations because we're fortunate the large majority of organizations that we deal with are doing fine.
Right.
And they're calling us in to help them do better, to help them sustain maybe into the next generation of leadership, to help them more fully live out their mission, things like this. So the interviews that we do with employees when we first go in, I think are mainly designed to determine the routines and patterns of the organization.
Yeah, and I agree with you. You know, most of the time there's a good story to tell.
Yeah.
But, you know, being honest, you know, occasionally we hear the opposite. Yeah. And, you know, we're able to uncover that a leader or an organization as a whole has a pattern that's really, it's caused a lot of pain in the organization.
What do you think is the most common pattern we come across in terms of leadership behavior in an organization that is not helpful?
Well, from a leader's perspective, there's a couple that would come to my mind right away. I think one is just a leader who just simply doesn't take the time as a matter of pattern to listen.
Yeah.
You know, a leader that just believes that it's time to talk first, listen later. I think that pattern, after a while, I think employees begin to believe there's no point then, and there's no place of engagement.
And do you think that's changeable?
Oh, absolutely, it's changeable.
We can teach people?
I think when people become aware as leaders that pattern is producing the result it's producing, I think a lot of them open their eyes and say, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that person.
Well, it's like when we look at this blog, we're going to say, do we really talk that much?
I know that I do, but I'm going to question it for you. Yeah.
But you know, I think that's absolutely true. People value being listened to, but leaders have a lot on their mind, so they tend to want to unload it first. The second one I think I notice is just that leaders tend to think that they affirm and encourage people way more than they actually do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what can we do about that?
Well, in fact, you know, we talk about this whole issue of growing self-awareness because, again, I just had this happen. I just literally interviewed a leader who said that he believes that he is an affirming.
He's the king of affirmation.
He's the king of affirmation.
Yeah.
And so what we did is simply said, well, let's talk to a few members of your team. And in talking to a few members of his team, when he heard, frankly, that in fact he's not the king of affirmation, that's not where his heart was, though. And so, you know, when he recognized that he wasn't aligning with what his true heart's intention was.
So you could affirm him in that his intentions were good, but his practice was just not as robust as he'd like it to be.
Not as robust as an understatement, but yes.
Well, I think, you know, that's what I've been thinking about is that our lives, whether they're personal, whether they're our leadership lives, or they're our lives in organizations, are largely, the success of them is largely governed by the routines that we fashion, and it's possible to change those routines. It's possible to adjust them, to do more of the good ones, to do less of the less favorable ones, and that's really what we're doing. It's as simple as that, I think, when we go into organizations, is be real about the patterns and routines that are there and recognize and call out the ones that aren't and coach them up, challenge them to be more of what they intend to be.
And you know, Roger, I think there's so much hope in that because sometimes I think leaders don't know where to start. You know, they're weary, they're tired, they're exasperated, and to realize that it can be broken down often into something as simple as beginning to recognize a pattern that you can change.
But don't you find that almost everybody that we get a chance to interact with has good intentions with respect to leadership.
Yes.
It's just the difference between the intentions and the actual behavior.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of hope in that.
Yeah, that's where the hope lies.
That's good stuff. Hey, next time, between now and next time, I'm going to be thinking about the differences between leadership and management. Those terms are thrown around interchangeably, and we're going to be thinking about whether they're actually the same thing or something different. And we're interested in what you're thinking about.